right, people. Happy Friday. Vladimir, happy Friday to you, my friend. All right. On Monday, I think you can guess what will happen. Ambassador Leonor Zalabata, permanent representative of Colombia and president of the Security Council for the month of June, will be here to brief you on the Council's program of work. We will confirm to you the exact time of the start of the briefing a bit later, but we expect it around 12:45. As you heard from Pramila Patten not long ago, the Secretary General's report on conflict-related sexual violence was issued today, and it said that cases of conflict-related sexual violence verified by the UN in 2025 rose sharply from 2024, marked by extreme brutality and overwhelmingly targeted women and girls. A total of 77 parties, including state and non-state actors, are listed this year for cases of conflict-related sexual violence, including parties added to the list in previous years. The report says that in 2025, documented cases of sexual violence as a tactic of war, torture, terrorism, and political repression surged, while multiple and overlapping political, security, and humanitarian crises worsened. Abduction and sexual violence form part of a broader pattern of attacks by armed groups in remote areas of Burkina Faso, Mali, and northern Mozambique, with girls as young as 11 being forced into sexual slavery and repeated rapes in captivity, leading to unwanted pregnancies. The Secretary General said that sexual violence was perpetrated in detentions in multiple settings, such as Israel and the State of Palestine, the Russian Federation, and Ukraine. In Myanmar, patterns of sexual violence continue to be used in detention settings as part of the repertoire of political violence to intimidate and punish opponents. The full report is online, and you just, as I mentioned, you just heard from Pramila Patten. Moving to Lebanon, our peacekeeping mission there in southern Lebanon continues to observe intensive Israeli Defense Forces air and ground activities across the UNIFIL area of operations. The IDF activity was also reported north of the Litani River. Yesterday, UNIFIL reported 350 firing incidents attributed to the IDF and 25 to Hezbollah. Also yesterday, a UNIFIL convoy carrying an injured peacekeeper was stopped by the IDF and delayed for about an hour before being able to proceed. As a reminder, all parties have to ensure that UNIFIL has unrestricted access and freedom of movement in the conduct of its activities mandated by the Security Council. On the occasion of the International Day of the Peacekeeper, which as you know is marked today, but ceremonies in New York will take place next week on Friday. But in Lebanon, UNIFIL held a solemn ceremony in its Nekora headquarters, which included a tribute to the fallen peacekeepers. As you will recall, 6 UNIFIL peacekeepers have been tragically killed in the hostilities in southern Lebanon since March 2nd, with several more wounded. In his remarks at the ceremony, the general heading UNIFIL, General Diodato Abanyara, stressed that a political and diplomatic path remains the only viable solution to the conflict, adding that UNIFIL remains committed to supporting the parties in restoring the cessation of hostilities and creating the conditions for a permanent ceasefire. On the humanitarian front, our OCHA colleagues report that humanitarian access and emergency response capacity continue to face severe constraints. In Nabatea, strikes reportedly impacted a key road in Marjayoun that took place yesterday. That road is critical to emergency medical evacuations, also for aid and humanitarian workers to move about, and for people's access to essential goods and services. Elsewhere in Lebanon, local authorities tell us that repeated evacuation orders are forcing families to flee repeatedly and then return to their homes as security conditions shift. The humanitarian and resident coordinator for Lebanon, Imran Riza, said today he's deeply alarmed by the intensification of hostilities and the impact of evacuation orders by Israel have on communities across the country. In a statement, he referred to reports that airstrikes have harmed civilians as they attempted to leave areas under displacement orders, stressing that international humanitarian law clearly states that civilians, including health workers and first responders, must be protected. Meanwhile, we and our humanitarian partners continue to provide critical assistance across the country. Since March 2nd, the World Food Programme and its partners have distributed more than 11 million hot and cold meals to people affected by the conflict in Lebanon. And turning to the occupied Palestinian territory, our OCHA colleagues tell us that last night an Israeli airstrike hit a residential area less than 600 feet, that's about 200 meters, from 5 humanitarian facilities in Deir al-Balah. Luckily, no casualties were reported This followed an order from the Israeli military to shelter in place shortly before the strike. No staff members were injured, and the team is currently assessing the damage. We reiterate once again that civilians, including humanitarians, must always be protected. As for crossing, since Sunday, Karim Abu Salam has been the only operational entry point into Gaza for humanitarian and commercial goods, as the Zikim crossing has been closed. We continue to call for more crossings to be open and, of course, more critical supplies and assistance to be let in. Meanwhile, between the 11th and the 17th of May, partners working on protection have provided mental health and psychosocial support, as well as other protection, to more than 10,000 people, half of them caregivers and children. Services included recreational activities, art and drama sessions, counseling and parenting support, which was provided in shelters, it was provided in camps and schools and other displacement sites in Gaza, across Gaza. Partners remind us that to continue these services, particularly for children and adolescents, we need fuel, we need safe spaces to provide these services, and we need more staff as well as basic resources. Turning to the reports of the drone that hit a residential building in Romania, I can tell you that the Secretary General is alarmed by the reported overnight drone strike involving a residential building in the city of Galati in Romania. This reportedly injured 2 people. Just yesterday in his remarks, as you'll recall, the Secretary General told the Security Council, warned the Security Council about the dangers of further escalation of the war in Ukraine. We strongly condemn any attacks against civilian infrastructure wherever they occur. Moving to South Sudan, our friends at the World Food Programme are telling us that they're urgently scaling up the emergency response in Akobo County, where hundreds of thousands of people are facing catastrophic levels of hunger and malnutrition amid escalating displacement and conflict. According to the latest IPC update, parts of Akobo are experiencing IPC Phase 5, which is catastrophic levels of hunger, which is the highest level before an actual famine. Since launching its emergency response 3 weeks ago, WFP has reached more than 60,000 vulnerable human beings in Akobo County, including in Akobo. By the end of this week, a 33-truck convoy operated by WFP expected to deliver more than 200 metric tons of food and nutrition assistance, along with an additional 100 metric tons of emergency relief supplies. To sustain life-saving operations like these during the rainy season when roads are impassable, WFP will continue to deliver aid by air to ensure uninterrupted assistance reaches isolated communities. More than 60 WFP aviation flights, including airdrops, airlifts, and humanitarian air service passenger flights, have already transported some 430 metric tons of critical supplies into the area. That being said, as always, we need more money because we have more work and there are more needs. WFP urgently requires $266 million to continue providing life-saving food and nutrition assistance, as well as critical logistical support for the wider humanitarian response in South Sudan until the end of the year. Quick update from the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Ebola. As you have seen, Dr. Tedros, the head of the World Health Organization, arrived in Kinshasa yesterday. Upon his arrival, he spoke to reporters and said he traveled to the DRC to show his support for the communities impacted by the outbreak. He also asked the international community to increase its support for the Ebola response so that health workers get the medical supplies and the protective equipment they need. In Kinshasa, he met with the UN country team and our humanitarian partners. Meanwhile, in Bunia, WHO teams are establishing potable drinking water supplies at the Ebola treatment center there. This will ensure reliable access to water and also strengthen infection prevention and control. I wanted to say also that we are saddened to learn of the passing of Lieutenant General Chikadibia Obiakor, former UN military advisor for the peacekeeping operations and a distinguished Nigerian military officer. General Obiakor served as force commander of the UN mission in Liberia, following his appointment by then Secretary General Kofi Annan. He then went on to become the first African national to serve as military advisor for peacekeeping operations here at UN headquarters in New York. Following his retirement from active military service, General Obiakor continued to serve the UN, including by leading boards of inquiry on conflicts in South Sudan, Syria, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Throughout his career, he demonstrated remarkable leadership, professionalism, and commitment in the service of international peace and security. Our thoughts are with him, his friends, his comrade in arms, and the people and government of Nigeria. Couple of international days. If there was ever a day that I think deserved a year, it is the International Day of the Potato. I like the potato. This year's theme, Where Potato Grows, Livelihoods Flourish, highlights the vital role potatoes play in supporting food security, rural livelihoods, and local economies, from the Andean highlands to communities across Africa, Europe, and Asia. And Sunday is World No Tobacco Day. No Tobacco Day. Ahead of the observance, WHO says at least 40 million children from age 13 to 15 worldwide use tobacco products. WHO urges government to take stronger action to protect young people from tobacco and nicotine addiction. Chris, I have a quiz. Which is the fifth most spoken language in the world?
French.
Fifth? Seriously? We're gonna take away your citizenship. Portuguese. Exactly, Volodymyr. Portuguese. How many member states have Portuguese as their official language, do you think? 9. Only one of them is in Asia. Which one is that? What is its official name? Timor-Leste, exactly. So we say thank you to our friends in Dili. The payment from Timor-Leste brings the total number of fully paid up member states to 111. For the record, Timor-Leste paid $31,790 United States dollars, and we thank them for every penny. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. Does the Secretary General have any comment on reports of a possible 60-day extension of the ceasefire in Iran that President Trump is now pondering?
Well, I mean, we've seen a lot of reporting on what may be included. I think we've been in this kind of hovering position before. We very much hope that diplomacy will prevail. We hope to see an end to this conflict, and we want to see a reopening of the Strait of Hormuz to free an unhindered navigation.
And on another subject, the AP has done a story on the rise in early marriages in Gaza as a result of the war there. Does the Secretary General have any comment on this increase in child marriages?
It's yet another tragic manifestation of the impact that this conflict is having on Gaza, especially its women and girls. And we are seeing a rise in child marriages in so many conflict areas and so many places where humanitarian needs are great. We see the spike that you mentioned in Gaza. We're seeing a spike in Afghanistan. We're seeing a spike in Yemen. It is, we will try to do whatever we can to protect women and girls, and the international community should as well. At this point, the best way to do this is to relieve the horrific humanitarian situation that we're seeing in Gaza. Volodymyr, and then we'll go this way, sorry.
I have two questions, if you don't mind. At this very moment, Russian ruler Putin is making a statement to the press. He said, "It is impossible to name specific dates for the end of the conflict in Ukraine. I will not do that." What would you advise him?
Well, I mean, we don't have a date for the end of the conflict, but what we do want to see is an end to the conflict. We want to see the parties engage in actual diplomacy to lead to a fair and sustainable end to this conflict that respects Ukraine's territorial integrity, its sovereignty, in line with the Charter and relevant UN resolutions.
And another question. My question is about the Russian disinformation shared by the officials right here in this room. The fake about Ukrainian children in occupied Starobilsk has already been debunked. And the military targets hit in Kyiv turned out to be my own home, by the way. Museums, a grocery market, and some garages. The Secretary General is probably used to hearing all kinds of things, but still, what does he feel when he hears such blatant lies?
Look, I think as we know broadly throughout history and throughout conflict, that facts are often the first victims of war. For our part, the Secretary General will continue to condemn all attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure. We rely on our own statements, on the information we gather ourselves. Abdelhamid.
Thank you, Steph. Prime Minister of Israel Netanyahu said openly that he's planning to extend his control on Gaza up to 70%. Such a major development which could lead to ethnic cleansing and massacres. So I expected a statement, because this is not something like he's adding another like 20% of what he controls now. What is your reaction, the Secretary General reaction?
100% of Gaza should be for the Palestinian people, right? That's what we want to see. And we've been calling on Israel to pull back from its occupation, from the so-called Yellow Line, and that will continue to be our position.
My second question regarding Pramila Paten's report and what she said here, only she could investigate conflict areas authorized or mandated by the Security Council. Is that accurate explanation of her role, or?
I thought she is the special representative. I have no reason to doubt the explanation of her mandate.
It was confusing.
I mean, I would encourage you to read the resolution that created her mandate. Madame.
Thank you, Stéphane. Regarding UNIFIL, what does UNIFIL see on its operational and strategic role under the current circumstances in Lebanon? And how critical is the mission's presence to maintaining stability of the country?
Well, UNIFIL reports every day on what it sees, and I report on their behalf to you. I think the continued presence of UNIFIL remains critical in the current circumstances, for monitoring, for the implementation of its mandate, for the efforts to implement Resolution 1701 and their support of the LAF, also the protection of civilians they've been doing, helping civilians in their area of operations.
And the second question? Who will replace Madame Janine Hennis-Fleischer as a UN Special Coordinator in Lebanon?
I would not go on Polymarket to make a bet until we have a name announced from here. No. Sorry. I was being a little too glib for Friday afternoon. As you know, processes are underway. Speculation is rife whenever we name someone, but the process will be followed and an announcement will be made.
You know, the announcement will be in 1 month, 1 week, or just like this, because it's under this circumstance.
I completely understand, but these appointments originate with the Secretary General, but they have to go through the Security Council, and I think one doesn't need any special X-ray glasses to see the state of play in the Security Council, which often makes things difficult for the Secretary General to get his nominees through. On that note, Linda, apropos.
Yes,
apropos Linda, yeah.
Well, apropos of Yemen, I was wondering if you have an update in terms of the status of the detainees.
The update is that they tragically continue to be detained, despite our best efforts in our dealings with the Houthi leadership and our counterparts in the Houthi, and the best efforts of the international community.
And how long is it now?
I mean, it's for some of them, it's been years.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Hasta luego, hasta lunes, right?